Hello, my name's Hilary Clifford, and I'm a strong believer in anti-racism in action. It's important to me that we start to take action to improve opportunities for everybody. We all need to address our bias, and we all need to ensure that we're action-focused, so that we're really concentrating on our practices to create change. As a leader and as a recruiter, I'm committed to changing the way in which we work with our clients to manage their talent and to ensure that we are all able to generate a greater diversity of opportunity for a more diverse group of people to create greater diversity of leadership within our colleges.
Thank you so much, Hilary. Welcome to Anti-Racism in Action, Season 2, Episode 1. My name's Gavin O'Mara. I'm CEO and founder of FE News. We've got a really cool show for you this week. This week is all around anti-racist board and executive search and recruitment practices. Really interesting episode. I've got Amajit's going to be my co-host for today, and I'll bring you in a minute, Amajit. And we got Drew from Peridot, Luke from Morgan Hunt, which many people in the audience will know all about and sort of experience the recruitment services that are able to offer. But this is key. It's also very close to home for me, actually. I'm an ex-executive search consultant myself. I run FE Careers. Before me talking about college principals and this being very close to other college principals, I can now feel that uncomfortable feeling of feels the weight of responsibility. And today, I'm really excited, but I've also got this sort of cross sort of feel. So I can feel for the audience when it's been around your close area, in your area of the ecosystem of further education and skills, because this is really key. We've all got a responsibility to make change and make action. And today is a really key area. Amajit, I wonder if you could join us in the studio today. Hey, Amajit, how are you?
Yeah, morning, Gavin. Great to see you again, and great to be here, part of Season 2.
I know, it's great. I can't believe it's come around so quick, and it's a really cool episode today. Maybe if we could set the scene a little bit, because people may not have understood, but there was a significant thing happened at AOC conference in November. It wasn't just a day before the new FE News site went live. There was a very big thing that happened across the sector, particularly which is then going to have long, impactful change. I don't know if you wanted to explain it at all.
Yeah, at the AOC in November, as you alluded to, there was a real milestone event for the sector where 18 months beforehand, as you will recollect, Gavin, when we launched our open letter, we particularly spoke to the recruitment and search companies prevalent in FE and directly called them out, frankly, in quite a provocative way, because they account for 50% of the recruitment at senior and board level. We identified that they were part of the problem, but also led to a discussion that they could be part of the solution, or at least half of the solution, because the other half of senior recruitment is managed by colleges and boards directly. And due credit to the 5 main recruitment companies, 3 of whom have been covered on this program: Hilary, obviously, AOC, Drew at Peridot, and Luke at Morgan Hunt, and the other 2, FE Associates and Further Education Associates, FEA. And we invited them on a journey through a series of 6 sessions that spanned over 15 months, where we said, look, what does good look like in the context of redressing the imbalances of Black representation at board and senior level? And we went through a series of discussions where they gave of their time wholeheartedly, free of charge, but actually unprecedented as competitors. They set aside their commercial interest to elevate up to the wider good for the sector, that this is an issue that we can't do singularly, it has to be collaborative. And immersing them in the context of what it really means to be anti-racist, sharing some of the data, and then moving into, what do we need to change culminated at the AOC of the launch of a joint commitment to support anti-racist recruitment practices in the FE. And I feel truly, sort of privileged to have been part of that journey. The two colleagues that we're going to hear from, I treat more than colleagues now. They're friends, and they're also confidants, and they're also allies, in this journey. And I think it's a really seminal commitment that you've alluded to that took place in November, and hopefully now we're going to take that forward. The challenge lies ahead. Let's not be mistaken, but actually this is a really real breakthrough moment, the commitment.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, for me, having a background in recruitment, that is such a massive, massive, massive step forward for 5 direct competitors that have all working in the same marketplace to work together. It is incredibly important, incredibly exciting. So, Protocol, FEA, AOC, Morgan Hunt and Peridot are all going to be, working with different clients. And I just think it's really, really, it's exciting, but it's also brilliant reflection of like those organizations within the sector as well, like real massive. I've lived it personally, but I know the pressures that they're under, the Great Reshuffle, the great skills gaps. We're talking about the Great Resignation. It's hard to recruit at a minute, and they're still committed to this. We've talked them up. Let's bring them in, and then so Drew from Peridot, Luke O'Neill from Morgan Hunt. I wonder if you can come and join us in the studio.
Hello, good morning.
Hey guys, how are you? I just dropped my mouse, that's why I was
good to see you all.
Really, really good to have you come and join us today, and it's really important. And what a good start to the second season. Thanks, guys, for coming in. Amajit, I didn't know if you wanted to sort of kick things off with Luke and Drew.
Yeah, we're all familiar with each other, but and had conversations along the way. So bringing in Drew first of all, why? Drew, what were the motivations for you, to engage in this unprecedented collaboration?
So when we talk about anti-racism in action, Amajit, it's actually the action part which speaks loudest to me. I think it's very much about no longer being a comfortable bystander, observing from the sidelines and actually quite worried about possible repercussions of challenging racist behaviour and attitudes. It's about recognising our own discomfort at times, talking about racism as a white guy, and instead very much seeing, as you alluded to earlier, the power of friendship and allyship and need for that. I think it's very much about doing our best to put ourselves forward and in the shoes of others, and just imagining sometimes how it would feel and the impact it would have if we were subject to racist behaviours perpetuated by, what are seen to be racist systems. And I think to enable us to do that, or me to do that personally, because that was the question, wasn't it? I have to draw on my own experiences of such things like homophobia. So it's the closest thing I can imagine, where I've been in workplaces where it's been uncomfortable to be truly open, or where my sexuality was mocked or described as banter, or where I've had things shouted at me in the street by strangers. And a situation happened recently where I was called a puff when getting a sandwich and a coffee very recently, or worse, getting physically assaulted. So what I've tried to do is, what I have done is draw on the hurt that these situations have caused and let it drive how I act. I haven't experienced racism, so that's the closest thing I can do. And so whilst I consider myself an ally of the Black community, and I'll do all that I can to help support the development of people in this FE sector and across Peridot, where we work with charities and wider education sectors, on reflection, I was probably a bystander at times because it was easier. And so it's the action that speaks loudest to me.
Yeah, thanks for that personal insight, Drew. That's really fantastic.
It's important.
Luke, motivations for you personally, first of all?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to me and Morgan Hunt. I think Drew's touched on it. For us, it was really about growing the awareness, listening to colleagues and the candidates that we represent in the market, letting them talk about their own experience and focusing on some of the key challenges that needs to be done to improve the situation, and crucially, as Drew mentioned, taking action. I think for us, it's really about how we can bring anti-racism to life as recruiters with our own staff and the candidates and clients that we work with as well. And I think we've been on a big journey as an organisation. We've had a big focus on diversity and inclusion within our business. Anti-racism has been a massive part of that, as is our relationship with the Black FE Leadership Group and the other agencies you mentioned earlier. It's really brought into focus the relative privilege I have as a white male, and that whether I was aware of it or not at the time, I've undoubtedly had opportunities and successes throughout my life where being white has probably helped me. So, for someone who's working in a diverse company with a diverse staff and candidate pool, and personally living in London, that doesn't really sit right for me. So it's really about taking action and helping to drive improvements.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. And I'm going to say this in the spirit of the relationship that we've developed over time. But that's the easy bit in some cases, self-evaluation and resolve and so on, not to underestimate. And the piece of paper that we all signed in November is all well and good. And Drew, you alluded to it, and Luke as well. This is about action. So what's changed? What's changed at Peridot? What are you doing in taking forward, that commitment?
So there's a couple of things around governor recruitment, which we particularly specialise in. So we've recruited over 300 governors to the FE sector over the last few years. And one thing that we're absolutely committed to is where there are multiple skill areas required for a board and a governor recruitment assignment, is not to put forward, only white people and white candidates. It's very much about supporting organisations and colleges to review what diversity means to them in the broadest sense, and helping our clients to understand that it's not just the diversity action which is important, it's about the next steps and how they will retain, develop those people for the long term and see them develop in their own organisations. And so it's important to recognise, though, that I'm very happy and pleased that lots of organisations and colleges are seeing diversity as an action that they want to take because they know it's important, and there's a growing pressure and urgency around that. And we're seeing that with, I would say, 99.9% of our clients. A significant number are saying, actually, we need to be better and do better. But the next step for them, which is probably more important, is around how you build inclusive practices as an organisation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Same question, Luke. What's changed? What's changing?
I think one of the big things for us was about focusing on inclusive recruitment in practice and breaking down the standard recruitment process that we follow and challenging ourselves to make each and every stage of that more inclusive. So, from writing an advert to where that advert goes all the way through to an appointment stage, that deconstruction of the recruitment process, both internally for how we hire and progress staff within Morgan Hunt's, through to our client base in the further education and broader public sector as well. So that's taken place. We're still in the process of fine-tuning that. I think that's going to be an ever-evolving piece of work. But we're putting this into practice in terms of how we work with our clients as a recruitment business at the minute. We've produced an inclusive recruitment guide to support our clients to put this into practice. And for us, it's about taking this process to both our FE client base and beyond, to the other sectors we work within FE, and really proactively supporting our clients to develop anti-racist and inclusive recruitment practices in the appointment of not just senior leaders, but across the board, from practitioner level through to frontline staff.
Yeah. And just one additional question before I hand over to you, Gavin, which is, the first of all, the recruitment industry is still overwhelmingly white, so in the context of your own organizations, are there things that you're doing to redress that balance in the context of how you're seen clearly by a clientele which you're looking to influence, so going forward? To Drew first and then Luke.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's about how we're seen. It's about who we are, fundamentally, and how we can best support our clients who, across charity and education sectors are very diverse. Almost every charity type that you can imagine, we help, support and recruit to. So in order to do that, we need a very diverse workforce. And actually, Amjit, since we had these conversations 18 months ago, we have achieved a far more diverse workforce at Peridot than we ever have to, because we had the conversation, didn't we, where I said, actually, it has to start with us.
Yeah.
We can't be, otherwise it's a sales technique, isn't it? It's a sales technique unless it's real to the organisation. And so we had to make it real to us first.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. What about yourself, Luke?
I think as an organisation, so two of our main offices are in London and Birmingham, two of the most diverse cities in the world. And I think we've always been proud that we've had a very diverse workforce internally. So for us, breaking down that process has really helped, that I mentioned earlier. And I think getting insight from different people across the business and how we reconstruct that has been really, really helpful. I think as well as that, working with our existing staff from all types of different backgrounds to talk about, how we can make ourselves more inclusive and how we can reach out to different networks has been really, really helpful. But we're not perfect. Where we need to improve is the diversity of our senior leadership team. We're very, very aware of that. So we're on an ongoing journey with that to make sure we improve.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think it also depends on the recruitment organisation as well, doesn't it? I know a number of different recruiters that have got, very, very diverse teams as well. And I think sometimes it's this sort of rolls into the next sort of set of questions, really. And I think, Luke, the thing I wanted to ask you about was, I know you guys are affiliates to the Black FE Leadership Group and done the 10-point plan. How's that worked for you guys, and what has it meant for the team? And what sort of lessons have you learned from that, really? I think that would be really handy to look at and explore, really.
Definitely. I think becoming affiliates, was hugely important to us as an organisation. I think if we're going to be talking to our clients and customers about best practice, it starts internally with us. And so much of anti-racism, I think, starts with this recruitment, search and selection. We recognise we're in a position of influence. And if we don't address it ourselves, then, we can't really be taken seriously. We recognise we aren't perfect, so I think I don't think it would be right to recommend these solutions without having gone through it ourselves. We've still got a long way to go, but I think it was the right thing to do, not only for our internal staff development, but our managing director was involved in the training. It was really enlightening and definitely eye-opening and really challenging. I think it's not every day that we talk to our colleagues about these types of issues. And there were people I worked with for 5-10 years. And I recognise that I probably haven't spoken to them about some of the experiences they'd had as Black people growing up in England. And I think that's definitely, not just improved understanding, but it's really motivated us to make this change. A number of our clients have obviously gone through the same training process. So it's been really useful to share best practice with them and talk about the different journeys that we're both on and really collaborating and taking that relationship to a slightly deeper level. So it's really, really been a big part of what we've done in our focus on this.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Can I ask you both this? We're going through depends who says it, really. The Great Reshuffle, the Great Resignation. It's really hard to recruit at the minute. There's a skills crisis. There's a recruitment crisis. You guys must be flat out busy. So thanks for taking time out today. How do we take this opportunity of the Great Reshuffle, the Great Resignation, to be able to drive things forward? How do we change the mindset of the employer to be able to be thinking more diversely, but at the same time, what tips could you share with the 50% that maybe are recruiting direct? How do you address this skills crisis around also be able to think around diversity as well? Drew, I don't know if you want to kick that off at all.
Yeah.
Tough question, I'm sorry.
It's a really tough question at 10:15 in the morning, so thanks so much for that. I think actually one thing we're trying to do with clients is not encourage them to rush. Because a rushed process where a hiring manager, I understand the urgency. Someone's resigned, the resignation's in, they need to hire immediately. Actually, just take your time. Just take a moment, take a couple of hours to really think about how that role could evolve, adapt, and the type of people that you could explore and welcome into that. And sometimes it's as simple as refining a person specification and going from, Luke, you'll probably laugh, 42 essential requirements, which is completely restrictive and narrows down the focus to something which is more broad and considers potential over direct experience. And so even at the most senior levels, executive level CEOs, we're already doing that and saying, let's refine that down and let's see how this opens up, opportunities for more people.
Yeah, no, very, very cool. The potential is key, isn't it? I think so many times it has been restricted by, like you said, 42 requirements, which, there's one person ever and they don't exist anyway. Do you know what I mean? They can do that wrong. Luke, what would you sort of want to share?
Yeah, it's a massive question, isn't it? I think, we could talk about this all day. And I think that there are many sectors that aren't struggling to recruit the right types of people at the minute. I think, it's this kind of market where recruiters are really at a premium. So it's a great opportunity for us, but it also presents a lot of challenges. I think one of the big things is if organisations aren't getting the results that they want and they're not happy with the makeup of their staff, they've got to look at doing things differently, clearly. I think it's challenging that status quo of, are you advertising in all the same places that you have done and getting the same results? That's not necessarily going to change anything. So I think thinking about the different networks you can engage with, the different job boards, different communities that you can reach out to try and get different results, and really about broadening that extensive network. I think a big thing at the minute, if you're thinking about a candidate and what they're looking for, is the organisation being able to articulate their value proposition. I think it's really about saying, look, this is us, this is what we believe in, this is what we stand for, and showing that that's put into practice and in action. And I think if you can articulate and get that right, that's what is going to make organisations stand out at the minute, because the reality is in this market, most colleges are looking for the same types of people in these skill shortage areas. It's about how they stand out as an employer, what they can offer in terms of progression, and what they believe in. They're the big things, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I think the great, for me, what I can see from all the different experts that are looking at it, we've put on my FE News hat properly, is that it's around the reshuffle and the Great Resignation is around looking for purpose, isn't it? We've been sort of stuck inside and had this great big weird situation with COVID happening. But then how do you communicate? Recruitment branding is sort of key here, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? That long-term sort of approach. Drew, can I ask you, because you touched on governance. Governance has got such an important part of everything to do with the organisation, from decisions that are made to also just looking at it and reflecting what is the makeup of that board. Could we touch on boards and what you think could be the future of how we could be thinking around anti-racism in action and how that could have a top-down approach?
Okay, so I'll start by saying all of our clients recognise that diversity is important and they want to take action. I truly believe that's why they're using us, and not simply putting an ad out on the college website to say, we need governors, let's see who applies. So they're taking action to address a need. And I keep on harping on about this. So the diversity as an action is one key element of this, but it's about developing inclusive practice and building an inclusive culture. And that really does need work. So training and development, policies for those working in senior roles who have to care for a loved one, or governors who need to be flexible and agile with their time, and so remote meetings, etc. An outright welcoming of difference from the very start, where difference hasn't been the norm. That's really important too. Strategies around diversity, equity, inclusion, and there's a lot of good work out there that boards and governance professionals can look to. Diversity audits and toolkits that they can do themselves, or they can work with organisations like the Black FE Leaders Group, for example. And I think on the horizon we have, or the immediate horizon is the regular reviews of governance, and how diversity, equity, inclusion can form a part of that review. These are all going to be really important aspects for chairs of search and governance committees, and governance professionals and CEOs and principals to consider.
Yeah, Luke, anything you want to share at all?
No, I'd echo what Drew said. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Because we have seen it. We have seen it, Gav, where we've
anything other than Graham is fine.
Okay, great. So we've had it where we've had clients in the recent past who recognise that diversity is the action they need to take, and so they've recruited difference. Okay, so they've taken the action, and because of a lack of inclusive culture, those people or a person out of a group, they've left, and their feedback to me was they didn't really want difference. And so what is right is our role in recruiters speaking to the client from the outset to say, okay, so you want difference. What have you already done? What action have you already taken internally so that we can give candidates the assurance that when they are recruited, this isn't just a tick box exercise. This is an organization that they will feel truly able to be themselves and contribute.
Yeah. And just feeding on the back of that, Gavin, which is how many boards ask the question of a candidate, how do we as an organization need to change to fulfill
what is interesting
potential?
Yeah, 100%.
I wouldn't do that in an interview. It's quite a big question for a governor candidate, but
well, it's interesting. I've just got to bring in Steve Lawrence, who's just put a comment on saying he's on 8 boards, and he's saying they always look at staff changes and promotion in line with what they look at. He's asking that question basically. I could read the whole comment out, but it'd be really long. But Steve's literally just dropped that in as a comment live right now. So I think there's that change, isn't it, around what we need to be thinking as people that are part of boards. But Matthew Saeed had AOC pre original lockdowns. We've had plenty now, and it's that was all around looking at diverse boards and look at the importance of diversity. I had a real privilege of meeting him, and he's a really cool guy. And it's all around. He's thinking around the power of having diverse sort of boards, diverse thinking, and diverse lived experiences. This is so key for the whole organisation driving forward. And I 100% agree. We've got to take something from that around thinking around, if we've got diverse boards, they're also going to be thinking around diverse teams. And then it just rolls on, doesn't it? If you know what I mean. It's just got to keep going.
Yeah.
And it can't just be the local area either.
No.
We're focusing on colleges
we're
operating in a local area. The one thing we've had to challenge ourselves around is, well, we don't just want to take the population of that local area. We want to look at society as a whole, because populations are transient now. Colleges and training providers are operating through subcontracting nationally. So their learners may not well be, and the people that are supporting and the staff that are delivering on their behalf may not be working within that close proximity to the college. And so it is important that governing bodies and senior leadership teams do have a range of voices that are helping guide them.
And maybe just a trailer for maybe a follow-up conversation. There's huge amount still to do. The representation is still appallingly low, and I know both Morgan Hunt and Peridot are absolutely resolved in that. But there's also paradoxes evolving, which is actually the black leaders and governors are often in areas you don't expect. So if you look at London, if you look at Birmingham, as Drew and Luke alluded to, and you look at the major conurbations, that's where there's missing black representation. And actually you've got principals and leaders in rural settings where there may be more liberated thinking. So I'll just throw that in as maybe a sort of future conversation.
Definitely. Particularly, today's levelling up white papers out. It's very, very interesting around how we need to be thinking differently. Everyone's sort of coming at this from all sorts of angles. Really, we're nearly out of time. We've got about 15 seconds left. But I want to ask you a really, really, really important question, because I think I want this to be really helpful to recruiters, but also to that 50% that don't use the recruitment, to go about it themselves and could be educated in different ways to sort of drive things forward. If you could dream big, I've asked this on season 1, every single episode, so I think I want to continue it season 2. looking at anti-racism in action, it's brilliantly underlined anti-racism in action. What would you want to see for anti-racism in action for best practice in search and recruitment practice? Luke, what would you want to see?
Two things for me. A big one is that people working in and applying for positions in the sector have the confidence that they're being judged on their ability, competence, and potential, and not the colour of their skin or ethnicity. And secondly, which we've touched on earlier, a shift in the data when it comes to the number of black leaders progressing through the management ranks and into senior leadership posts in the FE sector. They're the two big ones for me.
Drew, what would you want to see if you could dream big?
So I echo Luke's points there. So thanks, Luke. But that's good because we're thinking in alignment there. And so instead of that, mine's a challenge back to the sector and for black colleagues in the sector to lead by example, look at how they can advance their own sectors and others by being a trustee, leading the governance of charities across the UK, being involved in local governance of other education providers, because this is not an isolated issue with FE. And all organisations need to be taking action. And so they can be part of a solution wider than colleges alone. Yeah.
Amajit, what would you want to see?
Apart from Aston Villa back in the Champions League, sort of zone. I think seriously that first of all the metrics must follow the resolve and the actions, and BFELG will be facilitators, but will also be critical friends, looking sharply at the change there. And I think the other thing is that there is a further elevation of working with Luke and Drew, which is to influence the recruiting professionals inside the colleges themselves. That is, at the moment, unentered territory. There needs to be a serious conversation with sectors and boards that aren't appointing the likes of Peridot and so on, and think that they are managing this themselves. They need to be part of that solution. So for us, there's a resolve to engage that in the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, I think that's really, really key. I'm not going to skip the question. For me, I think it's Luke touched on it, that we need to be reflecting purpose. We're a very purpose-driven sector. Do you know what I mean? And we can speak about a new narrative. We need to have diversity is key, but at the same time, I agree, Amajit. We also need to have outside the box thinking from the actual employer themselves. Do you know what I mean? And I think now, hopefully, please. It be now that it's actually this stage of the Great Resignation, the Great Reshuffle can do that. I just want to add one last thing before we deal with the thank yous. Steve, thank you. Steve Lawrence is commenting through and really getting into the conversation here. He agrees as well, saying diversity on boards is key. And it also said about gender as well needs to be brought into this, as well as looking at BAME. But he's also saying with BAME-owned ITPs, he's saying interestingly, that they could have a reverse problem. So I think it's looking at diversity across all areas. You know what I mean? Like, how can we look at this for colleges, training providers, also awarding organisations as well? I know FAB are working really hard on this as well. This is such a massive thing, which recruitment is key. So I just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining us today. This is we're going to be every Wednesday, 10 o'clock. We've got 7 episodes in this season, actually. So this is the first. So thank you guys for joining us today. A really, really, really important episode. And this is a total collaboration between the Black FE Leadership Group and FE News. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that's been involved with bringing this together. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, audience, for coming in and putting the comments in and getting a part of the conversation as well. See you next week for National Apprenticeship Week. And we'll see you really, really soon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And only together, no one's got all the answers, only together can we make positive change and bring action into making change and changing racism within the sector. And only together can we do that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks all.